Hi, I want to talk to you for a few minutes about the intersection of spirituality and what we call UFOs or unidentified flying objects, often called UAPs these days. I've been a student of UFOs since I was a kid. I remember getting a book as a young teenager, which I still have in my book collection, which was about flying saucers. And I used to read a lot of magazines and articles and always just fascinated by the topic and trying to really wonder, are we currently visited by people from other planets? For a number of years, I joined and was a member of the MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, attended some of their meetings, got their journals, etc., and used that as just a furthering of that curiosity about the whole topic. But at the same time, I've also, as you know, if you've watched any of my videos, have this path, this spiritual path that I've been on that's led me into becoming a New Thought minister and looking at the science of mind and other New Thought philosophies and teaching them and talking about them and seeing how they give guidance for individual lives. And over time, I've began to see an intersection between the two topics. Now, in many of my videos, I like to talk about that we tend to see our lives as totally being in the physical realm, physical material world. In fact, many materialistic scientific people think that's the only reality, is this physical stuff that we see around us. Yet I've come to believe and know that the true reality of our existence transcends the material realm, that we're actually sort of in a stratification, an energy, vibratory levels of physical life through into the non-physical, into realms that are within the mind and thinking, to either higher realms of spirit and so forth. So that we have this stratification that goes from God and oneness and spirit at the highest levels of the vibratory level, down through the realms of the non-material, and at some fuzzy point they cross into what we consider the physical reality, and we have these things where we seem like things are separate and apart, and they're in relationship to one another, and they seem to be different, whereas when we move up the stratum, we recognize their unity and their oneness. Now, how does that spiritual vision of a material world, mental world, physical world relate to the topic of UFOs? Well, all of a sudden I have, over the years, begun to see the connections. One begins by just, looking at the words of Jung, who wrote about UFOs and flying saucers, not from a physical standpoint, but from a standpoint that they were like archetypal images that were coming forth from our unconscious for certain reasons. Now, I don't claim to be an expert on Jung's teachings on this, but what he got into was the fact that what people were experiencing may be coming from the depths of their unconscious, and that they are seeing things that are beyond the norm, beyond the material realm. That's a key takeaway for us. Most UFO people tend to focus on the material realm. Do we have any physical evidence? Do you have anything that can validate that this is real? A materialistic scientist says, why don't they just come down and land on the White House lawn and show themselves? They want this kind of hardcore physical proof that says they're ultimately real. Of course, what Jung is saying in his writings is that they're coming from our subconscious or unconscious. They're part of some collective consciousness that all humanity has aspects to. And I think the possibility is not one of either or. It could be just both. Maybe there are physical entities coming from other planets who are visiting here, and maybe there are multiple groups of these individuals, some with positive intentions and some with less than positive intentions. But it could very well be that many of the things that are experienced and labeled as UAPs or UFOs are more than that. So when we look at all of the experiences that are outside the realm of the norm of what we expect, we tend to lump them all as being extraterrestrial. But moreover, through time, people are starting to say, well, what about the possibility of time travel? Well, what about the possibility of interdimensional travel? And so maybe there's an aspect of this where the experiences that people are having are not interplanetary travelers, but maybe they are somebody from another dimension or another time. And then recently I was reading the works of an individual this woman by the name of D.W. Pasulka, who's written a book called American Cosmic. I'll link to it in the show description below. And in that book, she offers thoughts about the wide variety of religious experiences that people have had through the many years of human history, and that some of these religious experiences certainly relate to and look like some of the common experiences that people in current days are having that we're labeling as UFO or encounter experiences. So have there been encounters from people throughout history, from other planets? Possibly. And then there is the consideration that, well, maybe in these higher realms and dimensions, again, back to my model of material vibratory levels, up to mental vibratory levels, up to spiritual vibratory levels, that when we get beyond the things that we can sense with our devices and our individual human senses, maybe there are beings who are around us and that are transcending this third dimensional experience. Maybe, as Pasulka writes, that they are spiritual beings. Maybe they are angels and things of that nature. And that's an interesting question to think about. Are there spiritual beings that are around us all the time? Many people in many religions tend to believe that. Now, I don't teach and talk about angels myself, but I do believe that there are aspects of consciousness that transcend physical experience, that there are physical aspects of the one that are in the non-physical, and we can't see and experience them like we can in the third dimension here. There's another book that influenced me in this whole area a number of years ago. It's called Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. It was written by a number of individuals who were part of an organization called the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. This book came out a number of years ago, and I did a video on it probably 5-6 years ago, where I reviewed the book, and I'll link to that in the show description as well. But what I remember from that review and from that book was that people who've had encounters with things that they labeled ETs or extraterrestrials often came away with a certain spiritual experience. They felt like they had received messages. A high number of these people felt positive about the experience, that it was something life-changing. It gave value and meaning to their life. That in a sense it was maybe a taste of a non-dual experience for them, because it opened them to the idea that their lives are greater and grander than the simple third dimensional experience here on Earth. Many people left those experiences with a call to uplift humanity, to recognize that we're all one, to see that we're here for love and peace rather than for fear and separation and war. So many people, the majority of the people who were touched by such experiences, or at least a significant number of them, left with spiritual awakening type experiences. So, when we consider all of this, Jung's thoughts about archetypes, the work of Pasulka, I would add the work of Jacques Vallée and his Invisible College into the mix, and the work of Edgar Mitchell's group studying all this data, and we look at the vast array of all the weird experiences that are going on the planet, we have to ask ourselves, why is this? For my spiritual take on this, we tend to focus and see everything as a physical life on a physical world that we can sense with our senses and measure. And we think there are set laws of the universe that preclude travel from other dimensions and from other planets to visit us. And we can be so mired in a materialistic viewpoint that we can't open ourselves to the possibility that there's something greater and grander. So through all of this, perhaps we can see that maybe the story we've been telling ourselves of this material universe is not the total story. And that maybe the experiences that people are having of ETs, encounters, physical crafts, abductions, the spiritual experiences that people are having, the experiences of angels and interdimensional beings, anything that points towards a non-material aspect of life that seems to transcend our normal explanations are simply little pointers, opening us to the possibility that this life is greater and grander and more mysterious than we thought it was, and to expand our consciousness and to expand our sense of what is possible in this universe and open ourselves to a greater and grander and mysterious wonderment. Don't close our minds off to the possibilities of ETs and interplanetary travel or angelic beings or interdimensional experiences or after-death experiences or whatever it is that we want to close our mind off to and say, how can that be real? Instead, look at these experiences as the possibility of an opening for us to expand our consciousness and consider a greater and grander, glorious story. What I've come to recognize in my spiritual journey is that this life that I am living is much more weirder and much more mysterious and more wonderful than I can ever imagine. The more that I've come to learn, the more that I've come to recognize how little I know. So we should approach everything in life, spirituality, science, ETs, interplanetary travel, whatever it is, with a sense of wonder and awe and grandeur. Let us go with open eyes and open minds into this experience in which we're having. And let us truly wonder and grow and grasp at the greatest levels truths and recognize the limits of our understanding. I hope these thoughts have been beneficial. Thank you for watching.